In my recent vid, Blood River to Blackwater, I asked that we should start a wiki-leaks type organisation based on journalistic intelligence gathering on a cell structure. What's more, the recruitment of Western educated African women to do this would negate the advantages the ANC have of being a strictly Zulu or organisation, the race war, so to speak. Also, we must think in terms of safe areas and secure towns where private security can be employed and corridors between them. This is, broadly speaking, if you've seen my vid on trade inequality and South African infrastructure to try and make the infrastructure to avoid the most violent ANC supporting areas, and to sort of make the ANC Youth League wither from without and disintegrate from within by economic means. So these corridors would be secure and be corridors between areas of good governance. Further to this, if the ANC did a media blockout, we must look at the Polish version of Solidarity's operations during the Cold War, where they used letter drops and leaflet packages using compressed air to distribute them, so that people can pick these leaflets up. Also, safe houses must be set up for journalists. There must be a stage-by-stage process where media attention can be focused on South Africa through such an organisation like Afrikaner Leaks, we'll call it, like our version of WikiLeaks, to de-radicalise the ANC youth. We must also look at the use of undercover journalists infiltrating journalists as members to surround the ANC Youth League media, such as Julius Malema, with people to cut them off from the grassroots, so we control what message is taken from the ANC Youth League leadership to the grassroots, so that we can moderate that message over time and gradually de-radicalise. For this purpose, we should have a recruitment drive for Zimbabwe folks who've grown up in South Africa but dislike Mugabe and would be good candidates in the sense that their history is South Africa's future, because they've already suffered what Mugabe has done to them. And Malema has shown that by shaking hands with Butcher Bob Mugabe, that he wants the Zimbabwe's past to be South Africa's future. In terms of counterinsurgency, though, the Australian and British examples in Malaya and Vietnam should be applicable, as if this is only in a situation where South Africa goes like Rwanda. There's several reasons to believe this might be the case, because other African tribes are migrating into South Africa, and also there's the tension between the Xhosa and the Zulu within the ANC Youth League. But such a structure would be built by the Afrikaners themselves to link in with other people who are moderates in the ANC to work with them, and so the example of Vietnam in the Australians' case is given. The Australian experience of Vietnam is more applicable to South Africa, as those insurgencies were based on long, deep patrols in territory that was completely enemy held, and so supply dumps had to be used and patrols would live off the land. This is not the case. This was not the case with the South Africans in Angola helping UNITA, because there were friendly forces and friendly civilians. If the AWB stupidly does something rash, or the ANC Youth League stupidly does something rash, this would not be the case in South Africa. I would appeal for calm in South Africa, because we do not want this to happen. We're trying to stop any kind of civil war. if anyone from the Afrikaner side did that, we would just see a repeat of what the ANC did to the AWB when it crushed them in 1995 and 1996. Now, taking the Australian experience in Vietnam, they patrolled through into hostile villages, but they did not harm civilians or property, unlike the Americans did. They hoped by doing this to convert them to their cause, which in our case would be a tolerant, moderate South Africa and democracy that respects natural and economic rights. In terms of South Africa, we must consider these murder gangs to be as like light infantry insurgents. They're going around about their operations armed with rifles, pistols and medieval weapons, asangas, canobberies, etc. These folks are not being arrested, so they must be pursued and arrested by Boers security forces or private security, such as Blackwater if they're employed. In effect, under sheriff law. Under common law in the US and Great Britain, and which South Africa derives a lot of its law from, allows this, and South Africa often allows British courts to intercede on South African domestic law via the House of Lords, Privy Council and European Courts of Human Rights via the European International Court of Human Rights. The self-defence laws also allow any reasonable action to be taken to protect yourself or to prevent harm to or from others. But there's also the right of the individual to decide what is reasonable in the moment when their life is threatened or other people's lives are threatened. Now, policing under common law judgments is only consensual and is not to be imposed by a government. Even in Britain, there are private police forces with powers of arrest. All this can be done through the law. Now, if Boer independence is not possible right now, or flight from South Africa is for the poor is not possible, then we must have a relocation cooperatives to take Boer families to where the Voortrekkers are in Mozambique, or to the Western Cape where the Democratic Alliance is providing good governance. And then I conclude in that part by saying I'd like to know your opinion. Where such a structure was put in place, and in my other video I spoke about the need for economic anti-terrorism, that is to create a wall of non-connections, so there's no business or political connections between the mainstream South Africans, the Afrikaners, the Cape Dutch, the moderate black people in South Africa and the Boers themselves, between them and the ANC Youth League. But let's consider, if there is a Rwanda type situation in South Africa, what we must do. So Afrikaner Leaks must have its own computer servers that are unconnected and so their location protected. We must also look at having good logistic bases in Mozambique for the building up of aid, food, medical help if such a Rwanda type situation occurred. Also, cultivated areas in Mozambique are almost 80% of the country, and so you must build up those farms there. We also need friendly countries near them. Overall, the Western Cape is the model to go for the whole of South Africa, and then we must have a democratic Boer Republic. The Eastern Cape is where the problem is. That is where the most extreme Afrikaners are and the most extreme ANC Youth League are. As for a plan of civil defence force, yes, it's a good idea as long as the use of firearms is purely legal and defensive and sensibly used by individuals. And the terms like commander, military or police style uniforms must not be used because it's a direct challenge to the state, and they will crush them like they crushed the AWB. So I would use terms such as warden or neighbourhood watch, but we can also have the structure open to the use of private security and stronger arms if a Rwanda type situation occurred. Just like the British Army, we must have several different levels of response and also the ability to build and win hearts and minds.